At some verses that talk about whether how the words that we choose are going to reveal whether or not we have wisdom or whether or not we might be a fool. And so we're going to start in verse 2. Proverbs chapter 15, verse 2 says, "The tongue of the wise adorns knowledge, but the mouth of the fool gushes folly." That's kind of what I was talking about. There's no holding back the words of a fool, right? They just freely flow. Verse 7 of chapter 15, "The lips of the wise spread knowledge, but the hearts of fools are not upright." And in verse 14, jumping down there, still in chapter 15, "The discerning heart seeks knowledge, but the mouth of a fool feeds folly." And then in verse 28, "The heart of the righteous weighs its answers, but the mouth of the wicked gushes evil." And then you can flip over to Proverbs chapter 18. Proverbs chapter 18, verses 6 through 7. "The lips of fools bring them strife, and their mouths invite a beating." Has your mouth ever invited a beating? Yeah. I don't know about a beating, but yeah, I've definitely been spanked in my life because of the words that came out of my mouth. "The mouth of fools are their undoing. The mouths of fools are their undoing, and their lips are a snare to their very lives." All these verses deal with how we can make fools of ourselves by the way we talk. And someone who is wise seeks out knowledge, is careful and discerning. They weighs everything out before opening their mouth to speak. Those that are foolish are those whose words just flow freely out of their mouths without even thinking about it or without choosing them carefully. The foolish spill out all sorts of evil from their mouth, which often gets them into trouble. And it doesn't really matter how intelligent you are. You know, you might be a valedictorian of your high school, you might be a college graduate, you might even be a professor at a university. We're not talking about being foolish intellectually, we're talking about being wicked. These verses say a lot about wisdom and folly, but really what we're talking about, the other thing that they talk about that we're going to focus on is that they really reveal, our words really reveal what kind of heart we have. What comes out of our mouths is a direct representation of the kind of heart that we have for God. So just some verses real quick that you can take with you, and we can think about our words and really what they say about us. We're going to jump into it. Anytime you have a study about, I'm going to jump ahead. Did you know that your tongue is one of the most powerful muscles in your body? When you think about your tongue, do you think about it as a muscle, or do you think about it as an organ? I don't know. It's both, actually. You know, it's an organ, but it has all kinds of muscles in it. You have extrinsic muscles in your tongue that control the position of your tongue. So moving it side to side, for example, you're using these extrinsic muscles in your tongue to do that. Your tongue also has intrinsic muscles, and the intrinsic muscles in your tongue control the lengthening or shortening of it, how you can shape it. Can you make a curling thing with your tongue, Richard? You want me to show you, demonstrate? I don't think I'm going to, no. But you get the idea. You guys can do that in your seats. Practice your intrinsic muscles. I'm trying to get my intrinsic muscles to work right now and speak to you guys. But our tongues have some pretty cool uses, don't they? What's your favorite use of your tongue? I know what mine is. Eating. Who said it? Yeah. Tasting food, right? That is one of my favorite things about my tongue. The other cool thing, one of the cool things you can do with your tongue is you can clean your teeth, right? After you get done eating that tasty food, sit there and you can clean your teeth with your tongue. But one of the best things about our tongues that we can do is it allows us to form words. Right? We can communicate with each other, we can sing songs, and many other things with the words that we use with our tongues. And of course, if you're going to have a study about your tongue and the power of the tongue and speech and all that, you have to look at James chapter 3. So why don't you go ahead and turn over to there. We're going to read some of this. We're going to read James chapter 3. We're going to look at verses 1 through 10. I need to get there. My phone is about to die. That's one of the things. So I always go back and forth with, should I use my phone for my Bible? Not when it's gonna die on you. So let's go ahead and read this. James chapter 3, starting in verse 1. Let not many of you become teachers, my brethren, knowing that as such we will incur a stricter judgment. For we all stumble in many ways. If anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, able to bridle the whole body as well. Now if we put the bits into the horses' mouths so that they will obey us, we direct their entire body as well. Look at the ships also. Though they are so great and are driven by strong winds, are still directed by a very small rudder whenever the inclination of the pilot desires. So also the tongue is a small part of the body, and yet it boasts of great things. See how great a forest is set aflame by such a small fire. And the tongue is a fire, the very world of iniquity. The tongue is set among our members as that which defiles the entire body, and sets on fire the course of our life, and is set on fire by hell. Verse 7, for every species of beasts and birds, of reptiles and creatures of the sea is tamed and has been tamed by the human race, but no one can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil and full of deadly poison. With it we bless our Lord and Father, and with it we curse men, who have been made in the likeness of God. From the same mouth come both blessing and cursing. My brethren, these things ought not to be this way. So James defines a perfect man as, in verse 2, as one who is never at fault in what they say and able to keep their whole body in check. It says, we all stumble in many ways. Anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. There's many passages in the Bible that talk about perfection and tell us that we should strive for perfection. You can read about that in Philippians chapter 3. You can read about that in Matthew chapter 5, verse 48. One of the easiest ways for us to stumble and fail in our pursuit of perfection is by failing to keep our tongues in check. Verse 3, when we put bits into the horse's mouth to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal, is what that says. No man can tame the tongue. No man can tame the tongue on their own. I'll say it that way. But you can tame a horse. Anybody in here ever worked with horses? Okay? We have one person that's worked with horses. Oh, Zach, you raised your hand too. Good. Just a little bit. Okay, well, I've worked with them too. You can tame a horse. You have to break him first, though, right? You have to kind of break his spirit a little bit. You have to be able to show the horse who's boss in order to start training him and get him to do what you want him to do. I witnessed this breaking process by watching my uncle, who worked with horses quite a bit. He had some stables. He would board horses for people, and he went out and he bought for himself a young stallion, which those are particularly hard to tame. And he wanted it to be a show horse. So he wanted to take it to shows and do the whole thing with the whip and the halter and stuff, and sit pretty and stick your neck out and all that stuff and walk backwards or whatever they do. And so he's working with this horse, and one day I'm just watching him, and the horse is just being ornery. I can't say that word. And he keeps doing this, and he's just like getting ready to buck, and he's jumping up and down, and he's just fussing, and my uncle gets frustrated. And to get the horse's attention, he hauls back and he punches that horse right in the meaty part of his jaw, And it would be like, I don't know, it'd be like you going up to your kid who's acting up and is out of control, and you just go like that on the cheek, That's all it did. I mean, this little man's not going to hurt this horse. But he did that to get the horse's attention. And the horse was like, okay, he means business, right? So, the horse who had just been rearing up and was out of control, he was quickly brought back into submission. He got that horse's attention, and the rest of the time he was able to lead the horse around and make him mind. Now, of course, I'm not advocating you go out and you start punching animals. We don't want to do that. But it brings to mind 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verses 26 through 27, where Paul says, I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. No, I strike a blow to my body and make it my slave, so that after I have preached to others, I myself will not be disqualified for the prize. Just like that horse's spirit needed to be changed a bit so his behavior could be corrected, we too need to allow our spirit or our heart to be changed so that we can try to tame our tongue and correct the way that we speak. Any thoughts or questions or concerns for the animal or anything like that? Yes, Dana.
I wish you'd stay in your own lane, stay out of my parenting class. Next week's about punching kids. So.
Your parenting class, you're going to be talking about punching kids? That was great. Yeah. No, it was definitely a weird thing to witness, you know. And at first I was like, shame on you for hurting that poor horse. That horse wasn't hurt, you know. So anyways, and I definitely don't recommend you do that to your kids. Punch them in the head. So let's go on. Verse 5. Verse 5 says, likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. So why do you think that James describes the tongue as a fire? This is a softball question. Yes?
Well, I think you could put that into perspective of a little fire that gets out of control, burns the whole forest down. And if you don't think that, look at Northern California.
Yeah.
Little fire started and it just ravaged, the whole city of Paradise.
Yeah.
And I think that's the example.
Yep.
Just a little word, something that you don't think is very important that you say, can hurt lots of people's feelings, and then that gets a snowball effect.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the example, is small, careless spark, right, is all it takes to get the fire going. Yep. That's exactly why. The destruction that it can cause, these careless words that we sometimes let out of our mouth. We've all experienced that kind of destruction from time to time. You can probably think of relationships that have been really just messed up because of the words that people said. You've heard the phrase, think before you speak. One little slip of your tongue, one little misguided comment to someone, or hurtful name calling, or gossip, or, a curse word, or anything. Some other slip of the tongue can be like a little spark that can just catch a whole forest on fire. Just like a fire, once it starts, it's already doing damage. It doesn't take long for it to start that damage. It's already consuming. It's burning hot as soon as it gets going. And you might be able to put out that fire eventually and snuff it out, but the damage has already been done. And you can't change that. Verses 9 through 10 says, with the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. This is where we get into the real power of the tongue, I think. James 1, verse 19, tells us that God wants us to control our tongues, and he wants us to do that by being quick to listen and slow to speak. You ever heard that phrase, bite your tongue, right? Everybody knows that phrase, bite your tongue. There's a reason that phrase was coined. And it's because the tongue is so powerful that it can cause a lot of damage to others if we're not careful. So it'd be better to actually bite down on your tongue and go through that pain so that you can't speak instead of saying something that could hurt others. Since our brothers and sisters, our mothers, our fathers, friends, relatives, they are all human beings made in God's image. To curse them would be just like cursing God himself. But we just can't do it. One commentator said, Peter could say in one verse, even if I must die with you, I will not deny you. And then in another part, in the very same tongue, he denied Jesus, like we looked at, with an oath and with curses. Then you have John, who said, little children, love one another. He was the same man who had once wished to call down fire from heaven in order to blast a Samaritan village out of existence. That's Luke 9:51 through 56. Even the tongues of the apostles at times, they struggled to, and they said things very differently at different times. Love over here, cursing over here. Let's build people up over here with these words, and with the same tongue, we're going to call down curses. So back to those muscles that we have in our tongue. Just like any other muscle, what do you have to do to keep it in shape? You have to work that muscle. You have to condition it. You have to do some repetitive motions or actions to that muscle to keep it strong and functioning properly. Matthew 16:24, then Jesus said to his disciples, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. God has given us the ability to choose how we will act and to choose what words we'll say. When we're given the opportunity to say something, we need to use those intrinsic and extrinsic muscles in our tongue to make it do the right thing. We need to work on the things that we need to work on thinking before we speak. We need to be quick to listen and slow to anger. We need to practice using our tongues, and we need to practice to use them for God's purposes instead of our own, to build each other up, to communicate to each other, to sing praises to God, and to worship Him. We may never be able to fully control our tongue and always keep it under control to the point of being perfect, but we definitely need to try. We need to work on it every single day, and that's what God expects from us. If we choose to control our words, we can achieve the spiritual maturity that James talks about back in verse 2. We all stumble in many ways. Anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. I'm disqualified by my words. I don't know about you. I am disqualified from being perfect by my words. Thank God I have Jesus who makes me perfect by covering me with His blood. Okay, Shelby.
A while ago you mentioned about cursing your parents. Under the old law, if you did that, you were stoned. Very rigid ruling against that, and death was certain. Not a lot has changed. Maybe the physical death isn't as quick. When you curse your friends and stuff, there's a death of that relationship that takes place, and the damage and the hurt is done. So the warning is still for us today as well.
Yeah, it's a great comment. And we're going to look at that a little bit. I think we have some verses in here that talk about that very thing, how our words really equate the thing that's going on in our heart and the words that come out as a result. Jesus equates that to murder, and we'll see that in just a little bit. Any other comments? Yeah.
Like the president's speech leads us to either war or peace, like the active war for the terrorism. And so everyone's either like fearful, like, oh great, everyone in the military is going to go, and families, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's like, is the president going to get on TV and say, hey, we have reached a time of peace, Yeah. Like it's either war or peace. Right. And that's the same thing with relationships. Mm. We're either starting a war or seeking peace.
Yeah.
Forgiveness.
I have definitely started some battles with my words, that's for sure. Man, George?
A lot of people would tell you your tongue can spit out a lot of poison.
Say that again?
Poison come after off your tongue.
Yep. You can definitely, it's just like poison sometimes. It can just infect people. It can infect relationships. It can kill relationships. Yep, so critical to keep control of your tongue. Larry?
When I was younger, I would read verses 10, 11, and 12 about the spring that brings forth different things and trees that bring forth different fruit. I wonder, where does this fit in here? And at least I've concluded that what he's really talking about is our mouth indicates what's in our heart. And if we want to have a consistently good speech, we have to have a consistently good heart. sincere. So we have to work on our heart and how we think about people and how we think about problems if we ever expect to control our tongue.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the starting place, is your heart. If your heart is so soiled, so seared, so just, if you just look at the world around you and the people in it and you just have disgust in your heart, then forget about ever trying to speak edifying words all the time, right? On the other hand, if you look at the world and people in the world with just nothing but love in your heart, you're going to find yourself it's going to be a little bit easier for you to control the things that are coming out of your mouth that would be hurtful. And so we're going to get in. That's exactly the point. Let's go on to, yes.
You have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Listen more and speak less.
Yeah, there's a reason God gave you 2 ears and only 1 mouth. Man, could you imagine if it was the other way around? Oh, that would be terrible. Thank you very much for that. Okay. So, no matter how hard you try to beat those tongue muscles into subjection, no matter how hard you focus on controlling your words, you'll never truly be able to tame your tongue unless you start by changing your heart, like Larry said. The words we speak reveal our character. Our character is who we are in our heart of hearts. Jesus made it very clear that he did not expect a corrupt tree to bear good fruit, and neither will a corrupt heart bring forth good fruit. In Matthew 12, you can turn over to there. Let's do that. Let's go ahead and turn over to Matthew 12. We're going to be spending quite a bit of time in there. We're going to be looking at verses 33 through 37. Matthew 12, 33 through 37 says, either make the tree good and its fruit good, or make the tree bad and its fruit bad. For the tree is known by its fruit. You brood of vipers, how can you, being evil, speak what is good? For the mouth speaks out of that which fills the heart. The good man brings out of his good treasure what is good, and the evil man brings out of his evil treasure what is evil. But I tell you that every careless word that people speak, they shall give an accounting for it in the day of judgment. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. Okay, so there's this guy that I know, somebody I know personally, who was planning on spending a few hours with his family one Saturday evening, just relaxing with them. Instead, he found himself dealing with a pretty major plumbing issue. So he finds himself plunging and plunging and plunging the toilets upstairs to no avail. And he decides the only way to fix this situation is to remove the toilet and run a snake down through there and try to fish out whatever was clogging the pipe. So he proceeds to remove the toilet, but as soon as he lifts the toilet up from the floor, water just gushes everywhere, okay? It's quickly filling the bathroom floor. It escapes into the hallway and gets into the carpet. It even seeps into the vent underneath the sink in the bathroom out of the return downstairs. So there's water just everywhere. This man, who I know very well, once he knew things were out of control, he began to scream to his wife to come help. Hurry, come up here, quick, grab some towels. Now his wife and his son have come up to see what's happening. And as the situation starts getting worse and worse, and he becomes more and more frustrated, he starts to let some words slip that we can't repeat here. This poor guy, who tries very hard every day to exercise control over his words, finds himself failing miserably at the first sign of trouble. Then there's a second guy. The second guy who was planning on spending a few hours with his family one night just relaxing. Instead, he too finds himself dealing with a pretty major plumbing issue. So he finds himself plunging and plunging the toilets upstairs to no avail. The whole upstairs system pipes clogged, so everything's backed up. He decides the only way to fix it is to drain the toilet, run a snake through the lines to try and get it unclogged. So he proceeds to remove the toilet, but as soon as he lifts it up from the floor, guess what happens? Water fills the entire bathroom. It gushes everywhere. It's quickly filling the bathroom floor. It escapes through the hallway and gets onto the carpet, and it even seeps into the to the vent under the sink and goes down to the return downstairs. Water is everywhere. The second man Once he knew things were getting out of control, he began to take a deep breath. He hollered downstairs, "Honey, I need your help. Can you please come up here quickly and bring some towels? I have a situation here." Now his wife and son have come to see what's happening. As the situation starts getting worse and worse, and as he becomes more and more frustrated, he starts to pray out loud. He's asking God for patience. He's asking God for wisdom. He's asking God to hold back the water. All of a sudden, he's looking up at his wife and his kids who are trying their best to help stop the water with the towels. He makes eye contact with his wife and kid, and he can't help but smile. Then he laughs, then they laugh. And this guy who I don't know very well, but he tries very hard every day to exercise control over his words. But because of his heart, he finds himself more and more able to do so when dealing with life's little troubles. Yeah. Shelby. Get a plumber. Yeah. No. That's how you learn. That's how you learn. Do it yourself. Ruin some stuff. Hopefully you don't ruin some relationships in the process. But yeah, get a plumber. You'll save yourself a lot of headache. Matthew 12, verse 35. A good man out of the good treasure of the heart brings forth good things, and an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart brings forth evil things. So I take Adam, my younger son, to school every day, and they have this drop-off loop that is just, it's terrible. It's disorganized. It's just crazy in the mornings. People don't follow the signs. Cars are cutting in front of each other. Kids are running for their lives, trying to get to school. For several days in a row, I noticed that there was this guy in a big red Dodge pickup, and he was pulling one of those big landscaping trailers, so he was easily recognizable. And he was waiting in this long line of parents at the pickup and drop-off, and he was so frustrated. He would always get so frustrated that he at one point was hanging his head out the window, and he's literally cussing at the woman in front of him. Like she could do anything to move the line faster or do anything about what was going on. He's just letting her have it just because she's right there. All he cared about was how he was being inconvenienced. And this went on for several days, and it really started to bother me, and I felt bad for all the kids that were around that were hearing this stuff, and I thought, man, now there's a guy who just has nothing but hatred in his heart. For him to be able to do something like that. What kind of soiled heart do you have to do that to people? It was all I could do to keep from rolling down my window and just letting him have it, right? Just give him a piece of my mind. But then, one day after that happened, I was pulling out of the school, and I finally started home, and I got stuck behind somebody who's driving 10 miles an hour. And it's a 20-mile-an-hour zone. You don't have to drive 10 miles an hour. For whatever reason, there's no cars in front of him. There's no kids trying to cross the street. I'm looking around. There's no flashing sirens or anything. Just going 10 miles an hour. And this goes on for the whole block. Finally, I get to my turnoff, and I turn, and I give it some gas, and I start going. And under my breath, I say, moron. I just like, moron. And it's crazy because just a few seconds ago, that's exactly what this other guy was doing. How is it that we can see someone else abusing people with their words, and we can easily diagnose this heart condition that they have, but we ignore the heart failure that's going on in our own chest? We fail to let the Holy Spirit work on us by practicing patience, peace, kindness, and love. Let's read that verse again in verse 35. A good man out of the good treasure of the heart brings forth good things, and an evil man out of the evil treasure brings forth evil things. There's that word again. We've talked about it before, that word treasure. What type of stuff do you have in your treasure chest? When you're dealing with trouble or frustration, you open the lid to your treasure, and what do you take out? What is it? Think about your own heart. Do you take out evil thoughts? Are they just readily available there? You pop the lid in your treasure, you pull out some evil thoughts. Do you murder people with the words in your mind? Do you slander? Is the treasure in your heart full of hate or impatience or indifference. Some of the verses, and I think we started to allude to them earlier, some of the verses I think of here are found in Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 through 22. You have heard that it was said to people long ago, you shall not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with a brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to a brother or sister, raka, which is a term for contempt, is answerable to the court. And anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. I'm sure the word moron is kind of equivalent to calling somebody you fool. To use words in such a way against a brother or sister, Jesus equates that to murder. How is that possible? How is it possible that words that we say can be deserving of the same punishment as murder? Words can lead to thoughts, thoughts can lead to actions. Okay? All sin is the same. Okay? Sin is sin. Yep. It's because of what's in our heart when we do it. That's the reason, I believe. You know, the same heart that is capable of cutting someone with their words is capable of cutting someone down. It's a serious issue, right? If it's impossible for us to tame our tongues ourselves, and they are capable of committing such destruction, we need to cut those words off at the source. We have to focus on our heart condition. I've never thought about that before. I mean, the same kind of heart it takes to go kill somebody is the same heart that's going to produce those words that just cut each other down. Who's that? Saul? Okay. Yep. Saul persecuted Christians. He even killed Christians. And he thought he was doing it for the right reasons. You know, I might think that I'm doing the right thing by rolling down my window and giving somebody a piece of my mind to set them straight, right? Not my place, necessarily. Saw a hand. Yeah, and when I'm sitting in my car and I've got the vantage point of somebody that's witnessing somebody else misbehave with their words and things like that, it's easy for me to look at that and go, I know better than that person, or I would have handled that differently. And then, you know, you don't go 10 feet and you find yourself doing the same thing. So it does start in your heart. We'll stop there. We'll pick up from that point. Thank you for your comments and your participation. You just keep on going, huh, George? Just wave to him back. Yep.